because I had questions and I wasn't watching the waiting room here very closely tonight. I'm sorry, guys.
Okay, well,
we noticed that too over here. You let us in about 15 minutes after we came in. That's okay. We're here now.
All right. So good evening, everybody. It is 1933. So apologies for getting started late here. I'm on my phone, so I haven't renamed myself yet. But if you have not done so already, please change your screen name to your first name and your call sign so that Glenn can take a screenshot and do the points for credit for who's here. So good evening and welcome to the May 5th, Revenge of the 5th. Hi. Yesterday was May the 4th. Be with you. Hi. Meeting of Palomar Amateur Radio Club. We'll get things started here. If you will rise and observe the flag behind me and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right.
Joe, what's the beginning of your call sign? Is it W6 or K6 or
K6 JPE? You don't know my call sign?
I know JPE.
Okay. Great. So I just got back from a run to Lowe's for some stuff for the house, so I'm a little disorganized at the present. But visitors, anybody first time visiting with us today? Speak now and give us your name, call sign, and location if you're new.
Yeah, this is Steve, KJ7BDL. I'm in Oceanside, but I kind of split my time between Washington State and here in California. Technician, and this is my first visit to your club. But I'm kind of studying for the general class and looking to actually start doing something with my license.
Fantastic. Welcome. Well, you're in the right place to learn all about it. Glad to have you here. I'm in Oceanside as well. Most of us are North County, a bunch of Poway people as well. So you're in good hands. And if you haven't, I'm going to do a little plug here for Oceanside CERT. If you're not familiar with the Community Emergency Response Team, check out oceansidecert.org. And that's another neat organization here in Oceanside.
Will do.
Okay, anybody else first time or brand new hams or license upgrades? Charlie has a comment.
First time.
I see Chris had his hand up there.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. I think I became a member 2 weeks ago. Got my license back in December for tech and studying general right now. I've been listening to different nets and whatnot. This is the first meeting I've joined. So
fantastic. Well, welcome. And whereabouts are you?
Valley Center.
Okay. Hey, you're neighbors with Mark then.
Yay!
You'll have a great signal to the repeater.
Yeah, I basically work off an HT, so that's like I keep going through and I'm trying to put a mobile base station that I can swap between base to my vehicle. I haven't found one that I'm that happy with yet, so.
Okay, great. Well, feel free to stick around after the meeting for a few minutes. There might be some people who'd love to chat with you or exchange info and help you out with your projects. All right, announcements. well, actually, any other new hams, license upgrades, etc. Visitors. Okay, announcements. So we are not going to be doing an official club field day again this year due to the continued uncertainty of coronavirus and various people in their various states of vaccination. And so this presentation today is about past field days, what's worked, what hasn't worked, etc. I'd invite you all to take what you learned today and make some contacts on your own, set up your own station, run a 1-alpha. And if you want to give your points, quote unquote points, because it's not a contest, but it's a contest, to the club, you work your stations as yourself, as your call sign. But when you submit your logs, submit them on behalf of Palomar Amateur Radio Club, Whiskey 6 November Whiskey Golf, W6NWG, and all of your points will get consolidated under the club's call sign. If you want to do that, you're welcome to do it all yourself or whatever other organization you're with. But we'd love to see those points come into Palomar Amateur Radio Club. Any other announcements of things coming up or going on?
Comment.
Go ahead, Charlie.
Number one, I want to give a shout out to Mark for engineering the internet link up to the mountain, and a shout out to the team that is pictured in the scope for all the work that they've done to begin the implementation of our digitization project. Well done. Next
Indeed,
comment.
fantastic.
If anybody is interested, the Poway Amateur Radio Society is having a field day at Lake Poway. Very modest. Right now will probably be a 2-alpha with a Goda station. But if any of the new people want to see what a group field day is like, they can send me an email to my email address, which is November 3 Victor at ARRL.net. And also, I don't think that we've gone through the standard procedures, but the folks who are studying for their general may find next month's program extremely interesting because it deals with what do you really need to know to start enjoying the high frequency bands. And the comments.
Great, fantastic. Thank you, Charlie.
I have an announcement too.
Okay, go ahead.
Following Charlie on Poway having field day, Ears is having field day, but it's a scaled down field day. There's going to be no food. It'll just be at our regular site up at Dixon Lake. And people are going up and setting up simple antennas, no antenna trailer or anything.
Well, the Poway guys are having food, and we have tri-band antennas.
What are you serving, Charlie?
Yeah. To non-Poway amateur radio station members, skunk. No, we're gonna have hamburgers, and we just need to have a count of how many people. And we're gonna buy it ourselves. And if people want to contribute to the food kitty, they'll be able to do it at the field day.
Hey, Charlie, so the date for the field day, the Poway one, it looks like from the email you sent me, June 26th to 27th. Does that sound right?
Yeah, field day is that weekend, and we'll start assembling at Lake Poway at 6 in the morning on the 26th.
Okay. Do we need to register or can we just show up or what do we need to do to get ready for that?
Don't want to get into that.
Okay.
People will send me an email. I'll
Okay.
give you all the details. Don't want to tie the meeting up here on that.
Okay.
Hey, Joe, I have two things.
All right, go ahead.
Joe, K2R football, you copy?
Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
Okay, thanks. Two things. I was in touch with, I can't think of his name right now, but I have a former member of Mark who lives in San Diego somewhere, is moving to Washington or Oregon. And he's got a bunch of stuff he wants to get rid of real cheap. I think he might even give some of it away. I know he's got a Tektronix scope, a big one with a cart, and some VHF, UHF signal generator, and some attenuation pads and things. I have a list if anybody's interested. He also has for you boat anchor people. He has an HT32B Hallicrafters transmitter from the late 50s, early 60s, which he also is willing to part with very cheap. I don't know what the condition of any of it is. Drop me an email, k2rp@arrl.net, and I will pass along his information and you can deal with him directly. The other question I have is anybody using the NWG call for field day?
The way field day is working is you work with your own call sign, and when you submit, you contribute them to W6NWG. So you don't work anybody as W6NWG, but you would contribute your contacts to us when you submit your logs.
It is possible for somebody to use that if the club wanted them to. I just wondered if anybody has. We use the call sign K6P, a 1x1 call that we've reserved, have used for a number of years, and we will certainly be glad to contribute our group. Our group, if anybody's interested in joining us, will be in Fallbrook at Bob AK6R's residence and business, where we were last year. And we'll be either a 2 or 3 transmitter, depending on how many people are interested. I think we did 2 last year, 1 for CW, 1 for phone, but we've got plenty of room for and plenty of equipment for anybody else who wants to join us. Again, be in touch with me, k2rp@arrl.net, and hope that next year the club will be able to be back to its own field day. Thanks for everything, Joe.
All right, great. Thanks, Ron, for that. Any other announcements, questions, comments?
Yeah,
Go ahead, John.
I just wanted to let people know I sold the bencher, CW key, and a little MFJ tone oscillator the other day. I've still got all the stuff that's listed in the scope, the recent scope, plus some test good bench oscilloscope general purpose. So if anybody's desperate for some equipment to make the shack look prettier, I've got it over here. But down the road a piece, we'll have to think about what we want to do with this stuff in the long term. But there's test speakers, extra desk microphones, little bits of everything. People, things that people collect as a rud. The particular ham that I got it from had to go into a nursing home, and they sold the house and got rid of everything associated with radio and electronics to the club.
I don't do electronics.
Okay. All right. Thanks, John. Us at the board, and we can pass it along to John.
Comment from KK6FRK.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, just to wave the flag for the youth and the scouts for the Poway Field Day event. I have reached out to local scouting units and the Poway Neighborhood Emergency Corps, which is um, for lack of a better expression, the most authoritative emergency preparedness organization in the area. And so we've reached out, or in the process of reaching out to scouting organizations to help them use the Poway Field Day as a opportunity for them to satisfy requirement number 7 on their emergency preparedness merit badge, which is to do a emergency mobilization. It's a requirement. What we've done in the past is we called it Operation Pancake, where the scouts have to go through a protocol to be at a given site with their patrol boxes and their camp kitchens and making pancakes in 1 hour. So we're going to try. I'm going to try and do the same thing. So those that show up for the Poway Field Day will be able to be taste testers for multiple scouting units pancakes that they will make on site at Lake Poway during the Poway Field Day. So stay tuned, but it appears as this is a go. So for Joe and the Escondido bunch at Lake Dixon, you can reach out to scouting units in your area. I'm happy to connect you with some, see if they'll do the same and serve you guys some pancakes. So back to you, Joe. KK6.
All right.
Kevin,
Great. Thanks, Kevin. Go ahead,
Kevin?
Charlie.
is there any indication that in Poway, the scouts will also pursue their radio merit badge?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So we're going to offer the radio merit badge during the course of Field Day. And so I'm presenting on May 13th, a little over a week from today. I'm presenting the program to the San Diego Imperial Council and in the district or zone breakout for our district, Rancho Mesa, which is the same boundary as the Poway Unified School District. So the answer is yes, we'll do the radio merit badge for those scouts that can make that time commitment. And then we'll do the emergency preparedness merit badge, which is an activity in partnership with PNIC, Poway Neighborhood Emergency Corps. I've gotten the preliminary thumbs up from the PNIC folks. So stay tuned. Thanks a bunch, KK6FRK.
All right, great. Thanks, Kevin. Any other questions or comments? Oops. Okay. All right. Repeater site and technical reports. Mark, I believe you have some news to share with us from today.
I had a little bit here and there. Let me turn that fan back off. Let's see. We had for the first time, a large group come up to the repeater site. And it was wonderful. You know, I go up there with just Christine a lot because you got to have 2 people for our insurance. And it was nice to see a bunch of other hams there helping out. The main thing is Glenn took charge of getting 40 feet of conduit laid from the internet link to the main repeater room. And it's all hooked up and running. However, I don't have the cabling in the conduit yet. And also, Glenn, we were going to run that 3rd run of RJ45 connectors and Cat 5e, and my Cat 5e arrived.
Okay.
So we've got enough cable that we can run it now.
Okay.
And a couple of the guys got started on cleaning up the battery building and putting the battery balancer in place. So I checked my stash of spiral tubing and I'm out of it. So I got to check the storage room. So if anybody has any spiral wrap they want to get rid of, we could use some and let's say 1/2-inch spiral wrap, probably about 30, 40 feet of it. Anyway, things that got accomplished. I got Wires X up and running. Glenn, for a little while, got Echolink up and running. We've got the communications link to internet up on the mountain. And I passed along, Charlie, you were going to donate a notebook computer to the cause. Have you heard, have you gotten a request yet? There's Phil.
I told you, but I haven't gotten the request for it. But if you want to pick it up, come on down.
Yeah, Charlie, can we talk offline after the meeting? Will you be around then?
Sure.
Phil's
Okay.
the one who wants it.
Yeah, I need to ask about model and other things, details like that.
Well, it's
I'm not
not,
picky. I'll take it.
it is a real computer. It's not an Apple tablet. Windows.
And would it be okay if I blew away Windows and put Linux on it?
Who asked that?
That's Phil, K9Q. I wanted to know if it would be okay with you if I wiped out Windows and put Linux on it.
I'll donate it to the club and the club can put Commodore 64 on it if they
Okay.
want.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so I think that's about the last thing. And guys, I'm planning another trip up to the mountain next month, Glenn and Hank and all, to make a run up and let's see. I don't see Kevin right now, but he was there a minute ago.
There. Yeah, Kevin's
Anyway.
here. Look for the Boy Scout looking guy.
Oh, there he is. All right. Anyway, I'm going to be making a run up again. You guys get a vote on when we go, by the way. But we got to make another run up. I want to get the coax inside that, or not the coax, the Cat 5e inside the conduit, and get the terminations and lightning suppressors put in place. So, and of course, keep working on the battery load balancer.
By the way, how's that switching power supply that we installed? Is that running okay?
Oh yeah, well,
Yeah.
I haven't fired up that 220 repeater, but it was
Okay.
running the other day. I got my high-end current probes, so we can go measure and see what it's drawing now. So last I saw, it was running fine. Yay!
Okay, cool.
You guys might want to note that one of the clubs that we host up there has a 220 repeater, and our electric bill went way up. So I went and measured the current draw of each of the repeaters and built a spreadsheet. And that one repeater has a 50 amp linear power supply, and it isn't used that much like all the repeaters. And idling, that repeater draws more than everything else on the mountain combined. So what John and Hank did was disconnect that linear supply and put a little switcher in place. And the little switcher draws a whole lot less power. So one of my tasks up there, Hank, you remember that voltmeter that you got a chance to use?
Yep.
There's a nice, precise current probe for that meter. Clamp on. It's good to within 5 milliamps.
Okay, cool.
We'll be rerunning analysis on that repeater and filling the spreadsheet back in again.
Comment?
Yeah.
Yeah, Charlie.
I, not trying to cut the discussion, but the team is making a major change to the infrastructure on the mountain. Some of that's going to cost money. Just want to remind everybody, if you want to participate and help finance some of the work that the team is going to be doing, our nonprofit status has accommodated a separate budget item for just the digitization project, and contributions to the nonprofit are tax deductible. And money, and you'll hear more about the digitization project in the next couple of months. Phil Karn knows what it is.
Yeah, I should also note that it is my plan, and I mentioned it to Charlie and some members of the board, to have members issued passwords to run the digital portion of the club. That will help, means there is an advantage to having a membership.
Well, the point is that over time, it won't be this weekend, and it won't be in time for field day. But we do have the objective of creating a remote controlled high frequency station up on the mountain. That's essentially getting along with the direction that ham radio is going to accommodate people who, like me, moved to an old fuddy-duddy retirement building, and I had to get rid of all my HF equipment. I'm now running 6 different stations throughout the world on the internet. I had to pay to become a member of the organization. I can use any one of them. I have to schedule the use, and their organization charges 5 cents a minute when you're using the radio. So we're keeping up with where things are going.
Great. Thanks, Charlie. Thanks, Mark. Anything else, Mark, for tech and site?
No, I think we're having a good old time. Stay tuned. Glenn is our promotions person, it appears. So contact him or myself if you want to join the next party up there. We're going to be, Glenn ran blow line through the conduit. So we're going to be pulling lines through conduit and terminating RJ45s on the end of Cat 5E, and setting up a Bluetooth link in the battery building. And of course, hooking up the load balancer to the battery bank. So all sorts of fun.
Is Mother's
The bad
Kitchen
news,
open yet?
Mother's Kitchen isn't open yet.
Okay, didn't think so.
But the sign there said, it didn't say it was closed because of COVID. It said it's currently closed because of renovations. So that's a good thing.
Well, renovations that they probably decided to go ahead and do because they were closed anyway because of COVID.
Opportunistic.
Yeah.
All right.
Please note, though, that the bathrooms are available again. So the general store is open and are allowing us to use the bathrooms at the site.
Nice. Good info. Okay. Cool. Let's see. Membership. Glenn?
Don't have much news. I'm behind on getting notices out to folks, and thus that probably explains why our member count on the website is down by 10 from last month to 148. So I need to send out some, sorry, I forgot to send out notices, and then send some for the upcoming people whose dues come due also. So apologize to the club for that.
Okay. Oh, one other bit of announcement that I should have mentioned earlier. There was a bit of a confusion with our post office box. The post office gave us the renewal notice, and during the changeover of the board, it somehow did not get paid. And so some of our mail was getting returned to sender. We have secured the new... we have secured the post office box, the same one that we had, and new keys have been issued. So mail should be flowing. Glenn, I don't know if you have anything with the bank or anything like that, but I know we got an email from the bank saying, hey, we need your new address. If there's any way we can update them that everything is normal, we can go ahead and do that at this point. And if anybody gets any comments from people that say, hey, your post office box is wrong, assure them that it's right and it's fixed. So if something got returned, please resend. And that is being checked on a regular basis. Okay, that brings us to the end of the opening. We went a little bit over the normal allotted time, so I'll go quickly through your board. Your scope editor is Keith, KM6CXW. He would be happy to hear from any of you with articles and pictures and experiences, especially after field day. Boy, we'd love to see what you all did for field day. Get those pictures and stories into scope@palomararc.org. Your repeater site and technical chair that you just heard from is Mark, KF6WTN. Director Chris, KD9LF. Director Ron, AJ6FQ. Glenn, your membership chair, who you just heard from, AI6RR. Jim, your treasurer, K2VO. Jim, your secretary, W6TQS. Charlie, your vice president, you heard from earlier, NN3V, and I am Joe, your president, K6JPE. And now I will turn it over to Anthony, K8ZT, for our presentation tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for letting me speak at your club this evening. It's only 40 degrees here in Ohio for some strange reason tonight. And they're expecting frost and maybe a hard freeze in the morning, so I'm sure you have a little different weather there. I'm going to send, before I start here, real quick in the chat, I'm going to send a link to all my presentations I've been doing over the last year, and it includes the one for tonight it's in there also. Move a few things around here real quick, and I'll start sharing the screen. Are you seeing the first slide?
I am.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So I'm Anthony Luscre, Kilo 8 Zulu Tango, and tonight's presentation is called Field Day and Social Distancing 2, the sequel, because last year I did Field Day in Social Distancing, the original. A little better artwork for last year because of the mask with the van on it from Field Day from last year. So it's my contact information, k8zt@arl.net, and my website, k8zt.com. And tonight's presentation is available at this link. Actually, it's the full 130 slide presentation, not the short one I'm using tonight. And that'll let you click on any of the links in the presentation. And that is also in that sheet that I did in the chat. So all opinions in this presentation are those of the presenter, do not represent sponsors of the session, the ARRL, or any other organization. I've created a sample letter if you want to use it. Again, there's a link here so that you have that available. So if you want to send something out to your club members about what you're doing this year. The purpose of this slideshow is to provide clubs that will not be doing a traditional field day or will only be doing a limited field day with ideas to encourage individual operators. And that's what my local club had to do last year, and many clubs around the country did. I know there's some hybrid operations this year, and there are some field days running, but give you some ideas on what you can do as individuals in addition to what you would normally do with your club. Hopefully, again, this year, just like last year, we'll build even more emergency operational capability as many operators who don't normally run a station on their own will get a chance to do that. So basically, 2021 has three options. The typical group field day, which some people are able to do this year. Individual members doing their own field days and then aggregating the scores. as our club did last year. And then some people are doing a hybrid where they're doing a small traditional field day operation and they're still aggregating their scores of individual operators. These are the official webpage for all the field day rules at ARRL. So traditionally, it's a group-based activity where amateur radio clubs and their members. It's often many new hams' first exposure to HF operations. I know it was mine back in 1981. And setting up antennas and stations, HF simplex operation, not VHF repeater operation. And it's operated in a contest-like style, even though it's not exactly a contest. And that's the first thing I want to talk about. Is it a contest or is it a test of emergency communications? It's really not. It's really neither. And I like the quote from Stan, K4SBZ. It's not a test of MCOM. It's a demonstration of MCOM. In other words, it is a PR event to demonstrate to the public what we can do, not only for MCOM, but also other activities of amateur radio or ham radio. And I think Stan really nailed that comment. I will add a couple other things. I think it's very important that field day always has the aspect of training involved with it. So whether you're putting on the field day as a group or individuals, a big part of that is helping people know what they need to know. So here's some pictures of previous field days that were on the cover of QST. I have these both hanging in my shack here. So the first thing about field day is the class that you're going to operate in. Everyone who participates in field day has to designate a class that they want to operate under. And there's actually 6 different classes, A through F. And each of these has additional options layered upon that, but you have to pick one of those 6. The classifications are based on the maximum number of simultaneously transmitted signals followed by a letter designator saying what class the group is operating as. So class A is club or non-club portable, 3 or more members, 3 or more persons, I should say. And it's set up specifically for field day, must not use facilities installed for a permanent station or use any structure installed permanently for field day. All club equipment has to be within a 1,000-foot circle. Class A is typically the class that most clubs use when they're operating field day stations. Its social distancing rules have made this setup and operation problematic. As in 2020, 2021, we'll see a big decrease in Class A stations. Class B is 1 or 2 person portable field day setup and operated by no more than 2 persons. And it has the same provisions as Class A. It is less problematic for social distancing because of the smaller number of people involved, basically 2. One of the common misconceptions about Class B is that it stands for battery. The B has nothing to do with battery. It's just the second letter designation that they chose. So Class B again is 1 or 2 people operating field day. It doesn't have anything to do with batteries, although you can use a battery for Class B if you choose to as your emergency power. You can use a generator or a battery, or you could even use commercial power for Class B. Class B actually has 12 possible permutations, but remember, you still only send a 1B or 2B, even though there's all these possibilities. So 1B1 will be listed in the results as one operator operating 1 radio with emergency power. And as you keep on going through here, 1B2 would be 1 radio being operated by 2 people with emergency power. 2B1 would be 1 operator operating 2 radios simultaneously with emergency power. And that's the category I'll be operating. I'll be using my right hand for 1 radio and my left hand for the other radio. Left hand is the FT8 and right hand is the phone or CW operation. I'll be 1B, 2B, and so forth. And then if you have commercial power or battery power, it will indicate on that in the listings. But again, you'll simply on the air say that you're 1B or 2B. Class C is a mobile station. And the way the rules read, it's a station in vehicles capable of operating while in motion. That's very important. And normally operated in this manner. This includes maritime, aeronautic, and bicycle mobile in addition to cars and trucks and vans. Vehicle does not need to be moving, but must be fully capable of motion without any changes in the antennas or the station setup. So Class C is not implicated by social distancing, but sometimes support services such as restrooms and food may be limited. Without a well-designed installed antennas, mobile contacts can be difficult. So if you don't already have a mobile setup, you might want to start planning a little bit ahead. I have listed some links here, and again, the links don't have underlines under them. They're in this nice serif font, or they have a little indicator by them in most cases. And again, you can click on these links for more information. And if you've never been to the K0BG site for mobile information, he has tons of great information there. So you might want to visit that site if you are planning on operating mobile for field day or anytime in the future. Class C, all operators and equipment must be in the same vehicle. So having a parking lot full of individuals in their mobiles doesn't count as 5C or 7C or 20C. That's a misconception that a lot of people have. You could only have the one vehicle with the one call sign for that C. Now you could have a 2C if you have two radios in the same vehicle. If you have a boat full of 10 radios, you can be 10C, but you can't have 10 separate vehicles to be 10C. And instead of Class C, you may want to consider instead being a Class A or Class B station. Use those same vehicles, but instead of having antennas that you can operate while you're mobile, you might want to consider putting up a temporary dipole or vertical or any type of antenna for a much better signal and a lot less problems. But again, you can still use that same vehicle for your power if you want to, or to carry your radio around. So this is not a Class C station, because they have to stop. They can't operate it when it's mobile. That would be a Class B or Class A, depending on how many people they're operating. So you can have a bunch of vehicles pull in a 100,000-foot circle, but they'll be Class A or Class B. They won't be Class C. Now, Class D is home stations. These are stations operating from permanent station locations. They use commercial power, and it could be a solo or family operation, and they're not affected by social distancing. The biggest problem before the ARRL made some changes was Class D can only receive points with classes A, B, C, E, and F. They can't do other Class Ds. Well, last year, at the last minute, the ARRL decided, hey, that could be problematic, so they put a waiver in place that said Class D could contact other Class Ds for points. And they've extended that waiver into 2021, so everyone can work everyone for points again this year. So this is actually the waiver rule information here, and there's a link. Now, they made one change since last year. Last year, Class D stations were able to contact other Class D stations even if they were running 1,500 watts. They said to level the playing field, Class D stations have to be 150 watts or less this year if they want to get points for contacting other Class D stations. Same thing goes for Class E stations, 150 watts. So that's a slight change for this year from last year. Class E, by the way, is a home station, the same as a D, except for they're using emergency power and not commercial power. The computers used to make contacts, such as RTTY, PSK, etc., need to be on emergency power too. But if you're only using the computer for logging purposes, it can be operated on commercial power. Now, I'm just going to stop here so I don't forget about it. If you need to operate a computer under temporary power, and let's say you're using a battery to operate your radio, one of the things that can be very useful is one of these, what they call so-called solid-state generators. It's basically a big battery with an inverter in it that you can operate a computer for the whole field day period with very easily, and that's what I'm using. Class E may work all field day stations, again, limited to 150 watts. It's probably one of the best alternatives if you're going to operate from home. Just operate as Class E instead of Class D by using emergency power. And it's also very much in the spirit of field day of emergency preparation to be able to use the emergency power instead of the commercial power, which would not be available in many emergency situations. Class F is an emergency operations center, an EOC, and last year there were almost no Class Fs operated because most facilities that would house a Class F station were closed because of the pandemic. And I think you'll see quite a few of them still closed this year. So there might be a few Fs out there, but they'll be few and far between.
Last question.
Yes, go right ahead.
So going back to D, since that's probably going to be more of that this year than prior years. So does that mean if I had a contact with another D station, as long as I'm at 150 or below, I can count my points, but they can't if they were?
Absolutely. If they're running more than 150, if they're running 1500 watts, that eliminates them from being able to contact other D stations. So there are people every year that, power up their home station with a 1500 watts, but they won't be able to use other D stations for points if they're running more than 150. So again, it doesn't matter what the other person's running, it matters what you're running.
Got it, thanks.
And the same thing applies for Class E too. You can't run 1500 watts as a Class E and get points for working other Class Es. Although I don't think there were a lot of Class Es that were running 1500 watts. There might have been some. Now, another rule, well, first of all, the whole idea of a distributed joint station operation, there is no such thing under the current rules. There wasn't last year, and there's no exception for it this year. The only exception would be a Class D station operated via remote control by operators at different locations. So let's say you had a station that you were operating remotely. You can have that be a Class D and have multiple people operating it from home. But they're using one call sign and all the radio equipment is located at one location. What you can't do is have 10 people say, we're going to operate under the club's call with our Class D stations, because you can only run one station with a call sign. So you can't run multiple stations under the same call sign. So everyone can't say they're going to operate with a club call sign. So the big thing that the world also did last year is they said, well, we will publish aggregated club scores. So for Field Day 2021, an aggregated club score will also be published, which will be the sum of all individual entries indicating a specific club. And my local club did this last year, and we had 22, which tied us for the first place in Ohio for the number of people contributing to aggregate scores. And there's a link here for more details on the exact language. The important thing is to make sure that you use a common club when you do it. Make sure you don't spell it differently. And to facilitate that, they use a little drop-down tool. I think it's up and running already. Let's see here real quick if it's up and running. It may not be yet. I haven't checked to see whether I'll check that later. I'm not sure if they had the login site ready yet.
Also comment on that?
Yes, go right ahead.
You're exactly right. It has to be absolutely correctly spelled exactly the same for entries of the things. So you can't say Park or Palomar ARC or something like that or whatever. You have to have it exactly the exact same letters as everybody else.
Now what they'll do is they'll take all the stations that were in there last year, and they'll be in the drop-down menu, so you'll be able to use the drop-down so that it'll make it easier to find your club if you did an aggregated score last year. And it's remarkable how many amateur radio clubs around the country are named the same exact thing. There's like 20 EARS, EARSs, and PCARS is very popular, and PARS is very popular. So those abbreviations are very common. Ours is sort of unique, as my local club is CFARC, Cuyahoga Falls Amateur Radio Club. So there's only one CFARC that I know of. So these are just some examples of stations. So if you're a mobile station in Wyoming, you'd be 1C Wyoming. Which section are you guys in? SD?
STG.
SDG. Okay. Yeah, that's always yeah, that's one of the two confusing ones. Orange and San Diego are both the ones that are 3 letters.
Well,
SD is
SD
in South Dakota.
Right.
Yes. Yes. And OR is Oregon, so that's always a confusing one. So just when you're copying, if you're not used to what you're copying, I have a list here that I'll share the link for of all the sections in alphabetical order with the abbreviations, and also with the abbreviations in alphabetical order, and also by the call district numbers. So let's go ahead and talk about setting up for field day on your own as individuals. And the first thing I want to mention is safety first. It's even more important to think about this when you're doing your own station, because usually when you're doing it as a group, you have multiple people who are focusing on the safety aspect while everyone else is working on the project. And matter of fact, you actually get bonus points for having a safety officer at a Class A station. But when you're doing it, if you're doing it on your own, you might not pay attention to things like that overhead wire that might be within reach of that antenna you're putting up. So it's very important that you go through the safety checklist on the ARRL website as an individual. Also, I would strongly suggest you don't climb as a method of putting your antenna up. Avoid climbing because it's very dangerous as a solo climber. So avoid climbing. Don't rush, don't cut corners. Remember not to go near any overhead wiring. You have to be careful with generators, especially gasoline when you're refueling. It's not safe to refuel a gasoline generator while it's running. Carbon monoxide fumes at enclosed spaces, so if you're going to run a generator, it has to be in a well-ventilated open area. Even putting it in a garage with an open door can be dangerous. So some of the options for social distancing stations would be Class B, using your residence, but none of your permanently installed antennas or home conveniences. But in the ARRL FAQ, it says convenient access across one's backyard to their home station is not keeping with Class A or B portable operations. So to be Class B, you really should not be at home. You should be off at a remote location. As far as options for emergency power goes, of course, generators, both standalone gasoline and natural gas. You can also use a motor vehicle-based power system. So even if you're not operating Class C, you can use a car battery and the charging system in the car to have emergency generator power. If you have a electronic vehicle or electrical vehicle, you can use that as your power source also. And it can count as a battery source, not as a generator source, unless it's a hybrid. You can use solar power. You can use batteries and battery inverter combos, as long as they're charged before field day. If you're charged during field day, you must use emergency power sources to recharge the batteries. To collect maximum bonus points, you can use solar charged batteries to get the solar bonus and the battery bonus. Other alternative power includes hand cranked, water wheel, etc. If you've ever tried any of these, they're harder than you think they are, unless you're using very little power. So I have a whole page here on generators, generator safety, and generator information. Again, these are links that I'll let you guys view on your own. Again, anytime you see the little link icon, that means that you can click on it. Here's some links on battery power. This is the kind of box I'm using for my emergency power. It's a little what's so-called solid state generator. And I have one of these that I use with my computer. I've used this for 2 years now. It's real nice. It runs the computer for quite a while. So the combination of the battery in the computer and this lets me operate a whole field day without having to use any other power source for it. One thing that you can do too is if you're using a computer and you're worried about a power source, some of these things like the ASUS transformer book can be operated off 5 volts. So you can use the cell phone battery chargers, and that's what I have set up for my FT8. My ASUS tablet lets me use those cheap little cell phone battery banks. Because you're setting up a portable antenna, and you might not have an antenna that you use regularly. Even if you're a Class D station, you might not have an antenna suitable for HF. So I put together a whole handout on antennas, and it's right here. It's portable antenna choices, pros and cons. It talks about the different things you can look at for setting up a temporary antenna. And then after that section, there's a whole section with links for setting these different types of antennas up. So half-wave resonant dipoles, information on building one, calculating the distance, non-resonant dipoles, resonant and non-resonant end-fed antennas, inverted V's and slopers. So I have links here for how to do them, but then there's also commercial examples also that are available if you want to go that route. Verticals, beams, 160 unlimited space antennas, magnetic loops, mobile antennas, VHF antennas, and general antenna resources. So this is all available, again, by clicking on the link or by using this shortcut, tiny.cc/portant. A lot of people might have a go box, and that's a great way to go out and plop down in the field somewhere and operate your own station very easily. Go boxes are nice because if you have a go box put together, that means that you're not going to forget the accessories you need to connect the radio to the antenna tuner or the other little things. And that's something, no matter how you're going to operate, if you're going to operate away from home as a Class B or Class A on your own, I would strongly set up your station, make sure it all works at home, and then pack everything immediately so that you don't get a chance to forget little accessories. It's just too easy if you're operating the radio for other purposes during that planning period to forget to put things in there you need. And I have a whole presentation on go boxes. A whole bunch of links on go boxes that I've created and other people have created. This whole page is on portable operations and go kits, and this whole section over here talks about batteries and battery power. And again, that's from my website. So Class B options, you can have vehicle-based Class B operation. This would be Class B, of course, because you can't operate while you're moving, so it would not be Class C. But if you, I think you'll get better results that way if you can do that sort of thing. This talks a little bit about doing a Class B if you have a really big property where you can set up Class B and be away from the house, but you could also do this by going anywhere. And this just talks, this is the actual FAQ that says you can't do a Class B, on your back porch. Some suggestions from a veteran Class B operator. My wife and I spend field day as our summer vacation typically. We did not do it last year, but what we typically do is we travel to a state that doesn't have many operators in it, and we operate field day, and that we also use that as our vacation. So I will talk about some things I've done as a Class B operator, because that's the way I've been operating most of the last couple of years. A couple important things include extra connectors and adapters, coax, power poles, etc., and a means to install new connectors if you break one off. So having a cable that the power pole falls off the end of it, you need to have another way to clamp a new one back on. So that's very important. Include spare fuses for all equipment. Have some tools to make simple repairs, including wire strippers, crimp tool, etc. Don't rely on one antenna. I always make sure that I have two operating antennas whenever I go out in the field, so that if I have a problem with one, I have the second one to fall back on. And having two different antennas means I have two different ways to sample the propagation. So I usually use an end-fed half wave and a vertical, but sometimes I also use my cobweb. And here's a link on how to pick a field operating position that I found that's very interesting from the Southgate group. Someone put together this article last year talking about some locations that it can be useful when you're going out in the field and setting up. A couple things as far as computer software suggestions for Class B operation. I have a backup USB drive that I keep in my Go box, and it has a copy of my logging software for my program, my logging software program, WSJTX for FT8 and FT4, the drivers and firmware for all my radios that I'm bringing to the field. So if I need to reinstall the firmware on my KX3, I could do that from the USB drive that I keep with me. And then PDF copies of all the manuals for all my equipment. I have some paper copies in my Go box also, but I find the PDF copies much better because I can quickly search and find the the piece of information I need in there. Spare cables for USB, CAT, audio. Pretty much when you're out in the field, if you're anywhere near civilization, about the only thing you're going to be able to find may be some audio cables. Finding coax and things like that can be very difficult in most locations. If you're going to be operating FT8 or FT4 and you need to be able to sync your time and you're not going to have internet access, a USB GPS receiver that you can plug in and have software for syncing in the field can be very useful. One year we were camping in a cabin in Delaware and we had no internet access. And I was fine for field day, but after a couple days, we stayed there a little bit longer and my time started drifting. I couldn't keep my time synchronized for FT8 and FT4. So we drove down to the McDonald's and I would go through the drive-through, get a milkshake and sync my time. And then I do that again 2 days later. After that, I bought the GPS unit, but I don't get any milkshakes now. So I'm not sure which is better, GPS or McDonald's milkshakes. Some other things that I think are important for Class B operation: make a list to ensure that you have adequate personal hygiene items, have AC power accessories, power strips, computer chargers, etc., even if you're using emergency power, because you don't know what you're going to be doing the day before as far as getting things set up. Bring your own small table and chair so you can, a chair that you're comfortable sitting in for 24 hours, or at least for 4 or 5 hours at a time. Don't bring something that's horrible to sit on. Although I'll show you one example when I didn't bring a chair. When in doubt, put it in the car. So this is operation at Glacier National Park in Montana. My wife and I took Amtrak out. It was around the U.S. Complete 15-day tour of Amtrak, and we stopped for a couple days and had a cabin just outside of Glacier. This is the view from my field day site of the mountains of Glacier National Park. I was sitting at this table and just turned around. Here's the cabins in front of me, and behind me was this whole view. The goat was a little bit further away, but they were all over it. This is the year that I was the first field day station in the United States to have the sun hit me, because I was on top of Cadillac Mountain in Acadia National Park in Maine. And even though it's not the most furthest east point, the combination of the mountain height and the distance east gives you the first sun light in the U.S. I operated K1. I operated one Bravo for that. This is my Go kit with my old Aircraft K2 in it, and I found a pair of rocks, one to put the equipment on and one to sit on, and it worked out very well. The sun got a little bright, and the screen on the computer I was using was not that good, but I had a blanket with me that I planned on sitting on, and I ended up putting it over top of myself as a little tent to block the sun out so I could see the screen when it was too bright. And I was right along the path, so I put this little sign up using the box from my solar panel, and I actually had more eyeball QSOs that year than contacts on the air. We've been to West Virginia 3 times, and in 2012 we were at Seneca Forest in a cabin without electricity or internet, and my wife got to learn how to cook on a wood stove, which is more difficult than you think it is. It's always too hot or too cold. And we also visited Cass Scenic Railroad. Over the years, we've been at another place in West Virginia in a yurt. I will be in West Virginia again this year, operating 2 Bravo from West Virginia. I've operated in my Volkswagen camper, which I unfortunately do not have any longer. My local club used this for a number of years. The last 3 years it wasn't running, so we towed it to the field day site and used it for a field day station. And this is me at Hocking Hills in Ohio. This is my last trip to the field. This was 2019 from Vermont. As I said, I'm operating this side here with my single sideband CW station. On this side, I'm operating my FT8, FT4 station. Oh, if you don't have a station, you know, as I think it was NN3, was it V, I think was the call sign? I was talking about him operating remote. You can operate a remote station and do that. If you have limitations for as far as antennas, etc., you can put up a balcony antenna or window or flagpole antenna temporarily. You can do satellite contacts, and then where you're going out in the field and holding a handheld antenna, so you don't have to worry about that. And one of the things about some of these limited space antennas, they're not very good for getting a good signal out, and some of them, like magnetic loops, are not really great as far as every time you retune the radio, you have to readjust the antenna. But FT8 and FT4 work very well with these marginal antennas. And here's an example of a magnetic loop. And with FT8 and FT4, you plop it down on one frequency on each band, so you're not retuning all the time. So it's very doable. So if you have limited antenna capability, think about adding FT8 and FT4 to your repertoire. Options for technician class licensees. Quite often, technician class operators at a club field day site are operating under a control operator who has a higher class license, so they're able to operate on all the bands. But if they're operating on their own, they're going to be limited to 6-meter single sideband and digital, 2-meter FM simplex, satellite contacts, 10 meters if it opens up on single sideband and digital. But there's also CW if they have capability on 80, 40, 15, and 10 meters. And I have a whole presentation I've done recently called Technicians Life Beyond Repeaters. And this talks about things that technician class operators can do. And it's a very good primer for things for field day. Again, that's available at tiny.cc/btech. So 6 meters is available, but you don't know how much activities there's going to be in your area. And if there is skip, there might be e-skip available, and it might provide multi-state contacts. If you are going to work 6 meters, I would suggest you also, in addition to phone, think about adding FT8 and FT4 to your repertoire, again, to increase the chances of contacts. 2-meter, especially FM, is not traditionally used much during field day, but there's nothing that says you can't use 2-meter FM as long as you're doing simplex, not through repeaters. And I just have a little chart here telling what simplex frequencies are available. You don't just randomly tune your radio. And there's a calling frequency, and that's suggested that you don't sit on the calling frequency during field day, but you can use it to call and then move to another frequency. Satellite contacts are fully available to technicians because they have all the privileges on the satellite for the satellite modes. But if you're just starting out, I wouldn't do it for the first time ever on field day. I'd start practicing now. This is an example of the Aero portable antenna. You can't really see it right now, but there's 2 rows of elements on this, and you can't see the other ones because they're pointing right at you. I have a whole presentation on FM satellites, which are the easiest ones to work. And 10-meter single sideband and digital is another way to go. If 10 meters does open up, there's some promise that it might this year. We've been getting some good propagation occasionally a couple days here. As I mentioned, the CW operations on 80, 40, and 15 and 10 are available to technicians. And I have a whole presentation called Fun with Morse Code that goes into operating Morse code. Even if you need to use a screen reader, a decoder, you still can make some contacts. So preparing club members to solo, training, helping people who've never been on HF before understand how to do it. I put together some information here on AWRL Field Day webpage. I have a contesting page. I have a whole presentation on digital operations, FT8 and FT4. I have this quick start guide for FT8 for field day because you need to set a couple special settings to operate FT8 and FT4 for field day that you don't do when you're normally operating. I put together a simplified list of rules and FAQ for so I could pass it out to all the members in our club so they didn't have to read a 30-page document, limited to 7 pages in sort of plain English. And actually, some places it's a little bit longer than the AWRL because I explain things a little bit more. You're welcome to use that with your club. As I mentioned earlier, I prepared this letter that you can share with your club. Our club put together some incentives. We had a random drawing. Everyone who submitted their score for our club aggregate total and made at least 2 contacts, we had a drawing for 2 gift cards for DX Engineering, which is right down the road from us. Online scoreboards can be very interesting. It's a great way to see how other people in the club are doing. This is an example of an online contest scoreboard. It's on the CQM contest, but it could be used for anything. You can do this with field day, and it only requires a few settings in your logging software, so your score will automatically be uploaded to it. Specific needs will be, if you're going to make more than a couple dozen contacts, you're going to want to probably use electronic logging software as opposed to paper logs. And this requires some support for people who've never used it before. I'll talk about that in a moment here. You might need to loan some equipment. Last year, we made it known that if people needed to borrow equipment, we had certain people that were willing to loan things or help build antennas, or provide an antenna tester if they needed to test the dipole that they just built. As I mentioned earlier, you need to log your field day contacts, and I think if you're going to make more than a few, it's actually very helpful to use computer logging. N1MM is a free logging software. The other that's very popular, it supports most contests, including field day. The Rat Pack group has Wednesday and Thursday meetings every week of the year, and they're going to do 2 nights, 2 Wednesday nights, June 9th and June 16th. Strictly devoted to using N1MM Logger. We're going to go hands-on, help people get things set up for field day, but also for any contesting afterwards. So these are going to be coming up in June. The other popular software for field day is N3FJP software. Scott puts out a very good piece of software. It's a commercial software, but it's not that expensive, and the field day program is not that expensive. So the scores for field day are based on the phone contacts count for 1 point, CW contacts count for 2 points, and digital contacts count for 2 points. So you get your QSO points first, then it's multiplied by a power multiplier. If you use 5 watts or less, you get to multiply your score by 5 if you're using a battery power. If you're using 5 watts or less with a commercial source, you get to multiply it by 2. If you're using 150 watts or less, you get to multiply by 2. Now, that power is determined by the highest power you use for any one contact. So if you make one 100 watt contact, you can't claim 5 watts then after that for your power multiplier. So it's based on whatever your highest power you use is. And then the score is added to your score bonus points for a variety of activities. And the bonus points include all of these: 100% emergency power, public media publicity, public location. Some of these are not that feasible in COVID restrictions. Some of them are. So there's a number of different things you can do. Here's a table of the bonus points. Some bonus points are not available in certain classes. So all the bonus points are available in Class A, but some of them are not available in Class B, C, or D. So I can't do an educational activity as a Class B station. So as far as publicity goes, that's a bonus point that everyone should try and get. Media publicity, social media publicity, site visitation by an elected government official are all things you can do. I put together a handout a few years back, and it's available on this link. You can print this out. It's double-sided. You can have it laminated so you don't have to hand out paper copies, and people can use their phone to shoot the little QR code and get the information that you have in your handout. So I have one on what is ham radio. I have this youth resources, and then I have a youth activity with a clothespin key that you can build. There's a little picture of one. This is the I got a screenshot of the entry, and when you do this, There'll be the club location on this form when you fill it out. It'll have the drop down. It'll be right here. Okay. So one of the things that's very helpful is if you're going to be operating for the first time, or if you're a little bit rusty, do some of the warm-up events. A great thing for warm-up available is there was a radio communications event on June 6th and 7th last year. I'm not sure if they'll repeat it again this year, but a really good event to try out is the AWRL June VHF contest, because it's right before the fill date. And these are actually last year's dates, so you have to shift these by one day. There's also the Phone Fray, which is a weekly contest every Tuesday evening. It's a single sideband sprint, and you can try out your station that way. And then there's a CW contest every Wednesday, and they actually do 3 of them during the day. There's one at 9 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock Eastern, and I forget the other time that the other one is. So these are available, and they're only an hour long, but it's a great time to try out your station and make sure everything is working. You could also do a net with your club on HF to test things out. Our local club started something after field day because we did a couple nets to test things for field dates, new antennas and things, and we call it the band expiration net. And what we do is every Monday night we use a different band. So the first week of the month is 6 meters, next week is 10, then 40, and then 80. And then if there's 5 Mondays in the month, we do 160 during the winter time. And during the summertime, we do a work band. So everyone gets a chance. And that's been great because it's been people have added new antennas and new operating capability to their station. I have a whole presentation on FT8, FT4 if you've never done it before. You could do a Parks on the event, on the air event to test things out. Couple things to do before field day: add your station to the field day locator. You can click on this little link and add your individual station where you're going to be at. Maximizing your field day experience, learn something new, record some videos and take photos to share future club meetings. What we actually did with my local club is we actually put together something called the Social Distancing Odyssey. We had slideshow where everyone contributed a slide or one or more slides with their videos and their pictures, or a story about their field day operation. It's just to share it with everyone so everyone saw what everyone else was doing. And we had a very good turnout. It was sort of fun to do this way. You can have a club, intra-club competitions if you're interested. The online scoreboards, which I already mentioned before, this is just instructions on how to set up for them. Write up an article for your club newsletter. And let me see, I got a couple more slides here that I think we'll just skip over here. So that's the presentation. And again, the full 130 slides are available at this link. And there's a lot more how-tos and specific information, especially for technicians who might be operating. And I'll go ahead and stop my screen share here, and I'll go ahead and take questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, things that you might be planning on doing.
Comment first. Hi,
Yes.
excellent AI6R. Wonderful presentation. Thank you very much. Too bad we didn't find out about you and get access to this about 4 months ago. I'm actually finding it exciting enough to think about actually trying to operate on my own.
You can thank Michelle for getting me for this, because she's part of the Rat Pack group and I'm also on the planning committee with her. So that's how I got in touch with you all.
Yep. Well, very good.
Questions? Well, as I said earlier, here's the link. I'm going to put it in chat again. This is the link to all my presentations, so you can
Uh-oh.
Did we lose Anthony?
I think Anthony's become frozen. Somebody ought to put another nickel in the machine. My guess is 25 cents now. Okay.
Yeah, he may have to reconnect if he doesn't auto connect, reconnect.
Okay. Mark, are you still online?
I am here more or less.
Okay.
I'm looking, nobody is trying to get in. That was kind of cool. I'm thinking, Glenn, you know, the club has, John has a nice vertical that was just donated. Oh, what is it, G5R? So we've got a nice vertical, got a couple of jet rigs. I saved the best antenna and base and mounts and everything from previous field days. So we really have one nice setup left.
Yeah. Well, maybe they've he lost power back there or lost his internet connection. I thought it was, again, a great presentation. And while we're not having a club field day, I'm kind of enthused with the idea of trying to have a personal one. Year before last, I did go down to the Poway group one, and it was very nice. Anyway, looks like most of the board members are gone.
Yeah, it looks like Joe's disappeared.
Yeah, Joe sent
know,
us a text saying he had family stuff that come up, and Charlie has left. So that's our president and vice president. So I don't know if that puts you in charge or me in charge. Neither of us are elected board members.
I don't know, but it doesn't really make any difference. Everyone, thank you very much for joining in with the group tonight. And I don't know about you guys, I really appreciated that. Next year we won't even need our masks.
Yeah.
So we'll have to get this party going, even if it's just the club has plenty of equipment. So even if it's just club equipment, but we got to do something.
Yes.
Anyway, are there any other questions before I close the meeting? This is being broadcast, by the way. Are there any other questions? Going once? Going twice? Sold to the man with the headset on. All right, night, everybody.